Sometimes teams get out of a rut by playing much better baseball, and sometimes it also helps to play a really bad baseball team. And the O's got a little bit of both this weekend with their series win at Coors Field against the Rockies. I'll recap all three games coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, Orioles fans. Today is Monday, September 2nd, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles series win over the Colorado Rockies this weekend as they went to Coors and took 2 out of 3, winning on Friday to open up the series with a game that was a little dicey, but they were able to hold on at the end 5-3, then falling late in a tough one 7-5 on Saturday before turning it back around for a 6-1 victory to clinch the series on Sunday and win their first series here in a few weeks. I'll give you what went right, what went wrong, and a shout out to a player in all three of the games. We'll highlight performances from Zach Eflin returning from the injured list, Emmanuel Rivera having his first big day as an Oriole, and some unfortunate injuries potentially to Dean Kremer and Ramón Urías. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. So we will begin this episode with a Friday win for the O's. After a series in LA that looked promising to start, they won the first game. The Orioles didn't look great, dropping games 2 and 3, losing a series to the Dodgers, and then going to Colorado, where the Rockies have not been good this year. But as I talked about on Friday's episode, weird stuff always happens at Coors Field. And no matter how bad the Rockies are, you can never just pencil in a sweep on the road against this team. And a lot of the weird stuff happened Saturday in the one Orioles loss. But if you get out of Coors with 2 out of 3, that is a big W on the weekend. And that is exactly what the Orioles did. And let's begin with the win on Friday. Orioles 5, Rockies 3 was the final score in game 1. And what went right from that one? Well, Albert Suarez just keeps on rolling with all of these guys around him dropping like flies, all the injuries to these starting pitchers. The Orioles even saw another one potentially on Saturday, which we'll get to. Albert Suarez just stays steady for this O's rotation. For the first time in his big league career, Albert Suarez completed 7 innings. He goes 7 strong, allowing just 2 runs on 8 hits with 4 strikeouts and no walks on 95 pitches against the Rockies offense on Friday night. It was once again just a delight to watch him pitch. And again, not his most dominant outing, only 4 strikeouts. He did allow 8 hits scattered across the 7 innings, but he just did his job. And that has been the Albert Suarez story all year. He has just done his job. And quite frankly, now, we'll say this before Zach Eflin returned on the injured list. Let's rewind to Saturday while Zach Eflin was still on the IL. If you had told me on Saturday, the Orioles need to win a game today, everybody's fully rested, who would you start? I think I would have started Albert Suarez among the pitchers that were healthy on Saturday. That's over Corbin Burnes right now, the way he is pitching. And I've seen some worry from some people about Suarez's season workload, because he is up to 124 and a third innings this year between the major leagues and his short time he spent in AAA Norfolk at the beginning of the season. But to be quite honest, that's not anything new for Albert Suarez. He threw just in 2023 162 and 2/3 innings between the KBO and the Venezuelan Winter League. And the year before that in KBO in 2022, he threw 172 and a third innings that season. He's only at 124. I mean, even with September, he's not going to get to the 172. He's not even going to reach his max. And usually, year over year, you are fine going 10, 15, 20 more innings every single year to be safe. And let's be honest, he's in his mid-30s. This is not a 24-year-old right-hander who you're trying to baby a little bit and just make sure his arm doesn't break. This is a guy who's a veteran, has thrown a lot of innings for a long time in a professional baseball career that's taken him a lot of places. And With that start on Friday, he was, again, not the most dominant self, but his curveball, which sometimes can be an issue at Coors Field. You hear pitchers talk about how their breaking stuff just doesn't break, doesn't spin like it does at any other ballpark because of the thin air. Well, he still got 8 whiffs on 16 swings against his curveball on Friday night, and some of them were hung, but they were still good pitches, or good enough at least. And he threw a season-high 25 curveballs. It was his number 2 pitch behind the fastball. And that's the other great thing about Albert Suarez. He knows he's going to throw this fastball a lot, and then he has 3 secondary pitches, and basically he goes into a game. He feels out which one he likes the best. He identified it Friday night, a couple innings in, as the curveball, and he just went to it a lot after the fastball, and it worked. Nothing gets to this guy. No moment is too big. He's cool. He's calm. I mean, seriously, if he had to start a playoff game for the Orioles, which is certainly in the cards, I would not be worried at all. It would be his first career big league playoff start, but I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. I think he would be up for the challenge. He finishes off a great August with the Orioles, where 6 appearances, 5 starts, 32 innings. Suarez posts a 1.97 ERA. And he did have a relief outing on August 1st before he moved back into the rotation when Grayson Rodriguez went down. But if you only count the 5 starts in August, he went 30 1/3 innings. That is over 6 innings per start, and posted a 1.19 ERA. That's 4 earned runs in those 5 starts with 24 strikeouts and 5 walks. Just a ridiculous month for Suarez after he did have kind of a rough July that saw him get moved back to the bullpen. Turned things right back around. I feel great every 5 days when he goes out there on the mound for the Orioles. Now, what went wrong on Friday? Well, it was the continuation of Gunnar Henderson in a little bit of a rut. He's been in a couple of mini slumps this year. This is one of the more extended ones. He goes 0 for 5 in the win on Friday night for the Orioles, and Gunnar's had an amazing year. He has not gone 0 for 5 very many times. And with the 0 for 5, just the second time, or excuse me, it was the second time in the month of August that Gunnar went 0 for 5, but he had only done it 3 other times this season before the month of August go 0 for 5. So it's been a little bit of an issue in August. Overall, he finished out the month with a 710 OPS, a 234 average, worst offensive month of the season for Gunnar, and he ended up going 1 for 20 in his last 5 games, including Friday, but the hard hit rate was still good. He had a stretch of 7 consecutive games without an extra base hit, hadn't had a multi-hit game since August 17th, just a little bit of a rut. And the Orioles offense has not been its best lately, and it's hard when your best hitter, your best young hitter, you're a guy who was an MVP candidate for a good chunk of the season, is not playing well. We know Adley Rutschman is also struggling at the plate. It's really hard to get this offense going when those 2 guys aren't going. So Brandon Hyde did make a little bit of a change. He moved Gunnar back into the leadoff spot for Saturday's game, and it may have sparked a little something. He had a hit and was hit by a pitch, so he reached twice in Saturday's loss. And then on Sunday, finally a multi-hit game again for Gunnar Henderson. He goes up there on Sunday, even though he was put back in the number 3 hole because the O's were facing a lefty. So Austin Slater was once again their leadoff hitter against a lefty. But he went 2 for 4 with 2 singles, 2 RBIs, and a walk with a couple of hard hit balls for Gunnar. It had been a while since he'd come through with runners in scoring position. He did that a couple of times on Sunday. Maybe the lineup switch, and maybe he will continue to hit leadoff against righties, can put him back in the right direction for what needs to be a big September for him if the O's want to win this division. And the shout out for Friday night's win, well, the shout out, of course, goes to Emmanuel Rivera. Just his 3rd start in the lineup with the Orioles since they had claimed him on waivers a couple of weeks ago. And with Ryan Mountcastle out, he jammed his wrist last week, sliding into second, and really is not apparently recovering like the Orioles would like him to. If he had been, he would be eligible, I believe, in the next day or so to come off the 10-day injured list, but it seems like he's maybe not going to be ready to come off the IL just yet. So with that, and with the fact that Ryan O'Hearn does struggle against lefties, Emmanuel Rivera is kind of the Orioles' starting first baseman against left-handed pitching right now. Like, he is the best option they might have. And Kobe Mayo is now here, so he might get a couple of those chances too. But with Urías out, which we'll get to, Mayo's going to have to play some third base. So that still could be Rivera's position. And he got that start on Friday, not just because he fits the lineup the best, but he's also had some fantastic career numbers at Coors Field, coming in a 359 average and an 1134 OPS in Rivera's career at Coors Field. Now, he spent most of his big league career with the Arizona Diamondbacks, which is why he has so much time playing against the Rockies, and he delivered. Had an RBI single in the second off of the lefty Austin Gomber to open the scoring, make it 1-0. And then he had the big swing of the game, a 2-run homer off of Gomber in the fourth, 432 feet to dead center field that put the Orioles up 3-2 at the time, a lead that they would not relinquish. And Rivera, he had to hit in a big spot because of the Urías injury in the ninth inning on Saturday and didn't come through. And then he did get the start on Sunday against another lefty, ended up going 0 for 4 with a strikeout. But in general, he becomes another player on a lower level than guys like Eloy Jimenez or Austin Slater, who were scooped up for basically nothing over the last month and have just helped keep this offense and this Orioles team in general afloat. And that has been huge. Now, if the Orioles can get Westberg back and can hopefully get Urías back and maybe get Mayo going and get Mountcastle back, there's not going to be a spot at some point for Rivera on this roster. But even if there's not, if he can produce now when he's needed, that's all you're really asking for. And he doesn't have to do this every game, but if he can do it once a series, like he did on Friday when he gets his chance, it makes the Orioles even that much more dangerous. I mean, he even made an outstanding defensive play at first base to save an error, get a key out in the bottom of the eighth as well. He's looked good at third. He's always been an amazing defender at third. He's looked great at first. Just a solid utility fit for where this O's team is right now, dealing with those injuries in the infield, and Rivera helped the O's get to that 5-3 win on Friday as the bullpen with Perez and Dominguez closed it out for the W. So then the Orioles were going for the series win on Saturday, and they had Dean Kremer on the mound, who had come in with 3 consecutive quality starts. And he didn't pitch amazing early in the game, but it looked like he could still get himself deep into the ball game. And then a line drive came back at it. And while he was very lucky it didn't hit him in the head or anything like that, he had quite the welt and had to leave the game in the fourth and put the Orioles very much behind the 8 ball. I'll tell you why that led to an O's loss on Saturday coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Now, you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we've got something a little different for you because now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. That is a fantastic deal because guess what? NFL season starts this week. Ravens and Chiefs on Thursday. Blindly give me Ravens money line. This is the Lamar Jackson Super Bowl year. So just visit FanDuel.com to download America's #1 sportsbook. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by the DK Law Group. When you need a law firm, do you want the legal runaround or would you rather have a no-nonsense approach? Well, you get the latter with the DK Law Group. The DK Law Group is a Maryland-based law firm who is redefining the legal process with their modern approach. The DK Law Group specializes in real estate law, estate planning, business law, and family law. They're tech-savvy, they treat clients like family, and they focus on keeping your legal solutions simple. And the DK Law Group knows that speed is key. So by leveraging technology, DK Law Group streamlines the process to serve you better and faster. So contact the DK Law Group today at dklawmd.com. And Locked On Orioles listeners can call today to schedule a free 30-minute consultation when you mention the tagline, Empowering Legacies. So after the Orioles picked up the W on Friday night, had a chance to win on Saturday to clinch the series. Unfortunately, could not do that and fell 7-5 in game 2 of this set against the Rockies on Saturday. Now let's talk about first what went right on Saturday. And that was Eloy Jimenez hit his first home run as an Oriole. It was a solo line drive shot in the 5th that cut into the Rocky lead, made it a 5-3 game at the time. This thing was a missile off the bat to center, 110.1 miles per hour off the bat, traveled 441 feet for a solo shot. And it was his first home run at all, not just his first homer with the Orioles, first home run at all since May 14th. That was the last time he hit a home run for the White Sox. And the 441 feet, also the furthest ball Jimenez has hit in a big league game since 2022. And if you put together what Eloy has done as an Oriole, I mean, he's around a 290 average with the O's, it's about a 720 OPS. He hasn't been the greatest hitter in the world, but he has been productive and he has been helpful as for a while a DH against lefties. And now with Ryan Mountcastle out, until Mountie comes back, Jimenez is pretty much going to be the everyday DH in this Orioles lineup. The O's said, as I mentioned, Mountcastle's wrist isn't quite healing like they want to, maybe not ready to come off the IL in the next day or two. So it's a little more runway for a guy like Rivera that I talked about, but also for a guy like Jimenez. And it's not just the production. It's that there is a clear change Jimenez needed to make when the Orioles acquired him from the White Sox at the deadline. He's always hit the ball hard. He just needs to lift the ball in the air. He was hitting way too many grounders, and he's not a fly ball hitter at this point with the O's, but his average launch angle has gotten much better since coming to Baltimore. He's hitting more fly balls, and it is leading to more damage. And yes, he did have quite a base running gaffe this weekend as well, but he is still doing damage by hitting the ball in the air, and that is huge, and he got rewarded with the home run on Saturday. Now, what went wrong? Well, that's what the Orioles just continue to get injured. And first, it was once again another Orioles starting pitcher, this time Dean Kremer. Wasn't pitching great, gave up 3 runs in the second inning, and in the fourth, he takes a 103.1 mile per hour line drive from Rockies outfielder Jordan Beck right off his right wrist. Now, his wrist swelled up immediately. The training staff came right out, and Kremer just right away had only pitched 3 1/3 at that point, comes directly out of the baseball game. Now, the Orioles during the game called it a right wrist contusion for Kremer, and the best news was the x-rays that he took during the game were negative. Now, Brandon Hyde said Saturday he would be reevaluated after the game Sunday. Now, the Orioles said, Drew French said before Sunday's game that Kremer was doing better, and the O's did not place Kremer on the injured list before Sunday's game, which was a good sign. And I'm just now, as I'm recording here on Sunday, looking at an update. Looks like Brandon Hyde said he's hoping Dean Kremer can avoid an IL stint, but it's too soon to say. And Hyde said, quote, he would be surprised if Kremer is pitching in the next 4 to 5 days, basically if he makes his next turn in the rotation as a starter. So what that tells me with Kremer is that, I mean, they slipped away without a fracture, hopefully, and they will seemingly continue to evaluate, especially how that swelling is going. We saw Kremer in the dugout on Sunday. He had that right wrist all wrapped up, but the x-rays being negative is a fantastic sign. Now you just think about, okay, what do you do here if he's, at least for now, not going to go on the injured list? Now you have a little bit of time to evaluate, because if you decide maybe on Tuesday that, like, all right, the swelling's not going down, let's put him on the 15-day IL. You can backdate that to Sunday, so it makes him not be out for as much time, and you can get him back still in mid-September into the rotation. But it's just an Orioles team that, I mean, they just, the next day, they get Zach Eflin back from the IL, and immediately they might lose Kremer to the injured list. Just another starter going down. For now, I mean, it is lucky that Eflin was coming back. Imagine if Eflin wasn't ready to come back and this happened. The Orioles would probably be either turning back to Trevor Rogers, who did pitch much better in AAA on Saturday, 6 innings of 2-run balls. So that's a nice sign for Rogers after he got demoted. But they're probably either turning to Trevor Rogers or calling up somebody like Brandon Young to make his major league debut. Like, that's what's next up for this Orioles rotation. Not that it's in an amazing spot to begin with the 5 they have now. But the O's did announce that it will be Corbin Burnes, Cade Povich, and Albert Suarez for the 3 games against the White Sox this week. So you still have Cole Irvin on the roster, because Eflin was added Sunday as the extra man with the rosters expanding. So you still have Irvin and Eflin. With the off day Thursday, Irvin and Eflin could go Friday and Saturday. And then maybe if you give Kremer a little bit of extra time, he could be ready by Sunday against the Rays. And even if he's not, once you get to Sunday, Corbin Burnes would be on more than regular rest to start again. And you could go back to Burnes, Povich, Suarez Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And you could really give Kremer a good break without having to use him until the middle of next week. The question is, with the state of the Orioles pitching staff right now, although the bullpen has been much better as of late, do you want to sit there for 8 or 9 days with Kremer just taking up a roster spot and not being able to be used? I would think they'll make a decision in the next couple of days. Either, okay, we think he can start by Sunday, or they put him on the injured list, they backdate it to Sunday and try to get him healthy and back and ready to go as soon as they can. X-rays negative is a great sign, but for the game for the Orioles, it meant that an O's bullpen that was not very well rested in that 3-game series against the Dodgers. Here are the length of the 3 starts the Orioles got from Irvin, Burns, and Povich. 4 1/3, 5 innings, and 3 1/3. And that bullpen, who did get a little more rest Friday because Albert Suarez gave them 7 innings, but that bullpen had to come in and cover 5 2/3 innings after Kremer went out. And they did pretty well. I mean, you got to give them credit. Keegan Aiken wasn't great, but then Birch Smith and Gregory Soto each put up scoreless innings, which was nice. Really, it turned with Cionel Perez. Perez came in the 7th to face a pocket of left, right, left. And unfortunately, after getting the first out, he walked the next 2 batters. So in a perfect world, Perez finishes off the 7th and Yennier Cano gets the 8th in a tie game. But Hyde had to go to Cano with 2 on and 1 out in the 7th because Perez didn't have it. Now, Cano did a great job to get out of that jam and keep the score tied. But at that point, your bullpen is super down. You're trying to keep somebody ready for Sunday. And he goes to Craig Kimbrell. And here's the thing. Kimbrell would have had to pitch in that game because Matt Bowman was more than likely unavailable. He had thrown 42 pitches on Thursday. They used him Sunday for a scoreless inning, but he was not going to be ready for Saturday. So at that point, after you use Cano, you only had Kimbrell and Dominguez left in the Oriole bullpen, and you still had to get through the 9th. And the way that the game was going, it was tied. You possibly had to leave a pitcher for the 10th as well. So Hyde goes to Kimbrell because you were going to have to use him anyway. He tries to give him a good spot, right? It was 6, 7, 8, 9 due up in the Rocky order. So you're saying, all right, don't face the big bats, face the bottom of the order. And Kimbrell was just bad again. He gives up 2 runs, and that was the difference in the game. But that's the kind of thing, that's the snowball effect. Even if the bullpen comes out there and pitches well early, when you lose a starter to a freak play like that in the 4th inning, it snowballs. And then you're in a spot where you might use Craig Kimbrell in the 8th, and that's what happened. And although he'd been pitching a little better lately, he gets put in a high leverage spot, and it all falls apart again, unfortunately. And maybe the worst part was the Kremer injury wasn't the only injury from that Saturday game. Then it's Ramón Urías, who had been amazing, posting an .858 OPS in August, had legitimately been the Orioles' best hitter over the last 2 weeks, kind of carrying this offense. First, he has a fastball buzzed by him early. Then he gets hit in the nose with a fastball. Luckily, it just kind of clipped the tip of his nose. He was able to stay in the game on the hit by pitch. Of course, some scary flashbacks to the James McCann situation right there. And then he leaves the game with a separate injury, covering third on a stolen base. He kind of clips his foot, his right ankle weird on the base, sprains his ankle, comes immediately out of the game late in that one. He was on crutches in the Orioles clubhouse after the game on Saturday. And then before the game Sunday, they placed Urías on the injured list with a right ankle sprain on the 10-day IL. Now, Coby Mayo was already coming up on Sunday. He was already going to be the extra player because the O's get the 2 extra guys with the rosters expanding September 1st on Sunday. But now they're going to need Mayo even more with Westberg still out and Urías out. I mean, we don't think we've gotten an extra update, kind of checking here live to see if we have a further update. We do not, it looks like, on Ramón Urías, but he's going to be at least out for 10 days. And sometimes those ankle sprains can take a little while. I mean, truly, it's going to be Emmanuel Rivera and Coby Mayo playing first base. The O's also just released Gene Segura from his minor league contract, so he's no longer an option for the O's right now. They still do have J.D. Davis, a third baseman in AAA. They have Nick Maton down there as well. We shall see, but it's going to be tough to kind of pull this together at third base, especially with how well Ramón Urías was swinging the bat. And the O's depth has been super tested. It is going to be tested even more coming up here, and especially at third base. So if Coby Mayo could get hot, now would be the time. And the shout out for Saturday's loss, well, the shout out goes to Gregory Soto. I've talked about it a little bit in passing over the last week or so, but wanted to focus on it more now. Soto put up a scoreless inning in a tie game on Saturday. And then on Sunday, he came in the 9th inning with a 6-1 lead, put up a 0 to finish off the game. Soto has now put up quietly, because a lot of them have been in low leverage, 9 consecutive scoreless outings. In that stretch, he's thrown 8 1/3 scoreless innings, 3 hits, 11 Ks, 2 walks, 2 hit batters, and just a 27% hard hit rate against him. He has been phenomenal. Now, Saturday and Sunday were 2 of the first ones in that 9-game stretch that have been anything close to leverage. right? It was the 6th inning on Saturday in a 5-5 game. First the bottom of the order, but he got out of there 1-2-3. And then the 9th inning in a 5-run lead is still the 9th inning, and it wasn't as clean. He gave up a couple of hits, one an infield single, but he got 2 strikeouts and he put up the 0. And I'm not considering Soto all the way back into the fold until we see him hold a small lead in the 6th, 7th, or more like 7th or 8th inning for this Oriole bullpen. But it seems like we're trending towards the direction of Brandon Hyde giving him one of those chances. Now, Cionel Perez had been pretty good lately as well, faltered a bit on Saturday. Soto could be the guy to take that high leverage lefty spot until Danny Coulombe comes back, and whatever part of the game it's in. 9 consecutive scoreless outings. That is huge for the O's. That is huge for Soto. Just need to see it in a really big spot, and then you can start calling this a much better deadline edition for the O's. But it was a tough, not just to lose Urías and Kremer, but tough to lose the game on Saturday for the O's. It evened up the series, but they still had a chance to win the series on the road on Sunday, and they were getting some big reinforcements. Kobe Mayo back to the bigs, and Zach Eflin returning to the rotation, and they both played a major role in the Orioles' win to take the series. I'll tell you how they did it to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Now, you've known that if you want to get tickets to Orioles games, Game Time is the place to go. But Game Time now has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And the Orioles, listen, I don't know if I want to call it a big homestand in terms of the opponents, but in terms of the division, when you get a chance, when you're a half game back of the Yankees, to play 3 at home against the Chicago White Sox, you've got to make the most of it. And we need you at the yard. So get to Game Time and get those tickets. And they've got all-in pricing as well, which is great. It shows you what the ticket's really going to cost with the fees, with everything. There's no surprise fees at Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That is LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So as the Orioles were looking for the series win in Colorado on Sunday, they got a huge addition back into the fold as they activated Zach Eflin off the 15-day injured list with that little shoulder issue that kept him out for a couple of weeks, and he rejoined the rotation and was set to make the start on Sunday. And the Orioles won the game 6-1, ended up winning the series with that W and get to 79-59 on the year. And also, shout out to the St. Louis Cardinals, who after losing to the Yankees on Friday night, held on barely for a 6-5 win on Saturday, and then scored 7 runs in the final 2 innings of Sunday's game to beat the Yanks 14-7. St. Louis goes in there, takes 2 out of 3 from New York, and the Orioles now sit just a half game back of the Yankees heading into play on Monday. And let's start with what went right for the Orioles Sunday win, and that was the Zach Eflin return. As he came back off the IL, and the Orioles didn't have to make a corresponding move because with rosters expanding on Sunday, he was just the extra addition was getting Zach Eflin back, and he was incredible. 5 perfect innings to start the game, and then just a Mickey Mouse swinging bunt single from Jake Cave to lead off the 6th, broke up the perfect game. Then he allowed a 4-pitch walk to the next batter because Ben McDonald made a good point about it. He hadn't pitched out of the stretch all day, and then when he first did, he threw 4 straight balls. We know how much Eflin hates to throw balls out of the strike zone and walk guys. Well, he turned it around and got a double play and a ground out to end that inning. Did get a little tired in the 7th, it looks like, with 2 outs. He gave up 3 consecutive hits for the Rockies to get their 1 run, but he got a big K to get out of a jam in the 7th, and the final line was fantastic for Zach Eflin once again. 7 innings of 1-run ball, 4 hits, 9 Ks and 1 walk on 85 pitches, just 5 hard hit balls against him. He's just been fantastic. He misses time. It's like he didn't miss a beat. He comes back and was just incredible again. Was incredible. And not only was he crazy efficient, I mean, it took him 49 pitches to get through the first 5 innings perfect. That is insane. But usually when you do that, you're barely getting any strikeouts because you're on this roll of okay, I'm here. I'm getting early ground outs in counts. I'm not really doing much to beat guys with long strikeouts. No. He had a season high 9 strikeouts as well in this game, despite the pitch efficiency. That is a deadly combination that we saw from Zach Eflin. And the deadliest pitch was the curveball. I mean, that was his pitch last year in Tampa that was just insanely good and made him a Cy Young contender. Now, it hasn't been as good this year, but 36 of his 85 pitches were curveball. That's 42%. Second most used pitch was the cutter. He threw only 20 of those. Just kept peppering the Rockies with curveballs, and it worked. 13 whiffs on his curveball was a career high on 24 swings. That is nuts. And his 18 total whiffs in the game, second highest of his career. He had 19 whiffs in a start in 2022. This one, second only to that one. The curveball was just tremendous. The cutter and the sinker were just there in the strike zone all day when he needed a strike. I didn't realize how much I missed it. Well, I kind of did realize how much I missed Zach Eflin with how bad some of the Orioles starts have been lately, but getting him back into the fold is just unbelievable for this Orioles team. Curveball unreal. Everything was amazing. And that's now 5 starts with the Orioles. The O's have won all 5 games started by Zach Eflin since they acquired him from the Rays at the deadline. And in those 5 starts, he's thrown 32 1/3 innings, 28 hits, 6 runs, 24 strikeouts, and 3 walks. That is a 1.67 ERA for Eflin. I am still ready to say it, and I'm still ready to stand on business with this statement. I think Zach Eflin was the best trade line addition by any team at the deadline this year. He could single-handedly save this O's rotation along with Albert Suarez. And that's at least what he has done so far through 5 starts. Just great to have him back. Now, what went wrong in this one on Sunday? Well, not really much for the O's, but it was certainly the Rockies' defense in the 4th inning. Now, former Orioles legend Ty Blach had been pretty good through 3 innings in his spot start. Cal Quantrill was supposed to start this game for the Rockies, got scratched on Saturday, placed on the IL. Blach gets called up. Now, Blach had been with the Rockies for a good chunk of the season as a starter and a long reliever, had a 6+ ERA, had been one of the worst starters in baseball, but they came out for the 4th after 3 innings of 1-run ball, and Kobe Mayo rocked a ball into right center field after there was a runner on that Jake Cave just kind of let roll right under his glove all the way to the wall. And a lot has to happen for Eloy Jimenez to score from first on a play. A lot did happen, and that allowed Eloy Jimenez to score from first on that play. Then with the infield in, with Mayo at third and 1 out, Cedric Mullins hits a lazy pop-up into shallow right center field. Should have easily been caught, held the runner at third, except Brendan Rodgers was too far in at second. He couldn't see the ball. Jake Cave was too far back and right. He couldn't see the ball. And it falls in like 10 feet into the outfield grass for an RBI single to put the O's up 3-0. And as bad as this Orioles offense has been lately, you can't give them extra outs. And that is what the Rockies did. And it turned into a 4-run 4th for the O's, one of their biggest innings in a while, to kind of pull away early in that game, which the Orioles desperately needed on Sunday to eventually get that win and the series win. But it was tough luck for Blach, who honestly was really important when he was with the Orioles, pitched for them in 2019, then got Tommy John surgery and was rehabbing in Delmarva in 2021 before the O's eventually released him before he got back to the big leagues. But there's been stories about how helpful Ty Blach was when he was rehabbing in Delmarva to those young Shorebirds pitchers. Now, none of those guys have made the big leagues yet, but 2 of the big names were Justin Armbruster and Brandon Young, who have both been pretty good lately in the Norfolk Tides rotation. And we could see, if not this year, definitely next year, join the Orioles. They've got some Ty Blach to thank. And that's a really cool story, how much he gave back to the Orioles, even though he was like a veteran rehabbing Tommy John in low A. And then the shout out for Sunday's win. Well, the shout out goes to the bottom of the Orioles order. Even with Ramón Urías out, being placed on the injured list, he had been dominant at the bottom of that order with all that production. They still kept producing. Kobe Mayo in the 6 hole rejoins the team as the September call-up added to the roster on Sunday. David Banuelos was also added to the roster because Mayo was the add, and then Banuelos replaced Urías. I don't know if Banuelos will stay for a while. It was mostly because he was already with the team as the taxi squad catcher, so it made it easy to just activate him for a day and then go from there. Forrest Wall was DFA'd off the 40-man to make room for Banuelos, but Mayo rejoins the team, made his plays he needed to at third base, did come out in the 6th inning, but that's because the lefty came out. The O's wanted to get O'Hearn in there and get a little better defensively, but came up with his second hit, that ball that scooted under Cave and scored Jimenez in the 4th, 98-mile-per-hour exit velocity. Cedric Mullins hitting 7th, had that RBI pop-up single, played a good center field as usual. James McCann capped off the 4-run fourth with a 2-run homer, a bomb to left center field off of block 108 off the bat, 429 feet. It was McCann's second hardest hit ball of the season, and 429 was his longest home run since 2022. And then he also doubled in the ninth, which gave James McCann his first game of the year in which he had multiple extra base hits. So kind of cool for James McCann. And then Jackson Holliday had a hit, stole a base, and played. I mean, he made some fantastic plays at second base this whole series, but specifically on Sunday as well. And everybody coming together to get a deep breath and an Orioles series win and get just a half game back of the Yankees heading into play on Monday. And the Orioles have a chance. The Yankees are at the Rangers, not the best team, but not the worst team either. And the O's host the horrendous Chicago White Sox starting today, 3 p.m. start. The White Sox are 31-107. Corbin Burns takes the mound. I mean, I can't think of a better get-right game than against the White Sox offense. He'll go up against the righty Chris Flexen, who has a 5.29 ERA this year. The White Sox just keep rolling him out there. Flexen's actually been pretty good in his last 2 starts, back-to-back quality outings. He did face the Orioles on May 24th. The O's got him for 4 runs over 4 2/3 innings. And then I will be back on Tuesday, recapping the Labor Day Game 1 between the O's and the White Sox, and then getting you updated on some Orioles roster moves. They signed Adrian Hauser to a minor league deal, someone that could potentially help out this Orioles bullpen down the stretch. We'll talk about what they may do if David Banuelos doesn't keep this spot for long, what they might do if Ryan Mountcastle is back soon. And also, unfortunately, Dylan Tate was claimed on waivers by another team. Nick Vespi was not. We'll get to that as well on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.